Okay, so we're out here. We're just gonna do a little basic trolling set. We're just trying to pop a fish first thing away, but talk a little bit like how to arrange a setup when you're trying to cover certain element, body of water, depth range, whatever. So like I like to put something in the prop wash. If you put something in the prop wash, you want something that's be able to handle the turbulence a little bit. Usually something you can put some speed on. These barbarians, you can put weights in them or weightless. One of the more versatile hard baits I've ever seen. This one's had the shit kicked out of it this year by fish. This is a great prop wash bait. It wanders out well, it tracks, it doesn't really blow out. You can take it up to almost 10 miles an hour. I've done just to test it, it has no problems. But first off, we're gonna get this prop wash rod out because they kind of take care of themselves. And when I say prop wash, even that's a little bit far. But we're gonna roll with that. I like to mount the rod holders right in the back. They're out of the way. And when you put those rod tips down like that, what happens is basically the line tracks with the path of the boat. So when you have the lines going between the density of the water and the air, that's when they'll cross over and they catch and hang on things. Put the rod tips down a lot. A lot of guys that are new to this stuff, they see that and they just think that's kind of bizarre, but there's a reason for that. It allows the bait to actually follow the course of the boat more. So when I turn it, that resistance of the line will kind of mimic the curve of the boat as it's going, so they're not doing this kind of thing. The second bait, I'm going to put out a big wandering crankbait. This is a trolling specific crankbait made by Chad Wiss. Wiss crankbaits, the 10-inch size. These are built like Panzer tanks. Got a big metal lip. You see a metal lip like that a lot of times, it's not going to be a bait you can do double duty casting. They take so much resistance to actually get the action to engage. They're like, here, I'll just show you really quick. Like, that's me hitting the shit out of it, and it doesn't even do anything. The buoyancy is so great. I mean, that could be something cool, but like, it's not really a twitch bait. It's a bait that you really want to put out. And because it has a lot of buoyancy, it's got that hard metal lip. This one can go really fast. It'll beat the crap out of you if you're trying to hold the rod, so I put it in holders. But when you add those two elements together and you give that constant resistance of trolling, a lot of these baits, when they tune them in right, and this guy's done a good job, they have a really nice natural wander to them that just constantly is trying to search for center. So it's a lot like those headlock crankbaits. I like these a little bit more because they're not relying on the little pins. The pin idea is really good, and those are really good baits. I'm not donking them, but like I just feel a little bit more comfortable with the fact that he just kind of built in the wander with the physics of this. It's not relying on that pin to kind of give it. But I'm gonna put this out there. This thing gets down pretty good. I'm gonna put this on this side rod holder so I can watch it. So it's kind of down and tilted out. I can watch the rod tip. If it's hitting bottom, I'll be able to notice it. I'm not really worried about the barbarian hitting bottom, so I'm not gonna really notice it if it does there, but I'm not really worried about that. It's in the prop wash. We'll put out one more small crankbait while we're doing this. I've got one just in mind. It's actually a twitch bait made by Blue Water Tackle. Blue Water is really known for making giant trolling baits. We got some of those on the way, but he really surprised me when he showed me this. And that's a great little twitch bait. So that's one you can do double duty with. It's got a nice little hang to it. Great little shallow twitch bait. Got that janky action. It's got a nice little wander thump to it when you just put it out and troll. Sometimes you got to tune them a little bit. See that? When I put speed on it, it doesn't just kind of goes out. So we'll run this one off of this side, and I'll tell you what, just for the purpose of this, put it in this rod holder. Hold on. Thing about these front rod holders, excuse me, it's cool to have that, especially when you're taking people out. But the thing is, the further up you make and they're not in the water, if I put the rod tip in the water on the rod up there, if I made a sharp turn, it would go into the prop. If I do it like this and it's just sitting out, it might not go into the prop, but it's going to cross back over. It's going to go in the lines, and if the dive curve's steep enough, it will go into the prop. The farther back you can keep the down rods, the more you're not going to have to worry about where it's going whenever you're actually trolling. Because a lot of times too, especially like with these baits, like you get caught up in things, you're trying to maneuver, you're trying to hit structure. Last thing you want to worry about is whether or not you get, the line of the prop, and that can really That can really complicate things for a little bit. No doubt. So, put this one. I'm just eyeballing that. It's probably going to run about 8 feet. The other cool thing you might want to notice, I don't know how many people do this. If you look up in the front, I usually put my trolling motor down when I'm trolling. 2 reasons. If I want to address a rod issue, all I have to do is kind of leave this thing sit, and I can go up there and kind of micromanage the movements while I'm getting rods and stuff with the remote control. The other cool thing is, actually there's 3. Whenever you hook a fish, a lot of times you don't want to have to worry about the big motor running. But if you take it out of gear, a lot of times what will happen is you lose a lot of the resistance, you lose a lot of the control in the direction from which you hook the fish. You got a long line out. A lot of times what will happen is people will kill the motor, and they'll lose the fish because they lose the tension. They can't get out of the rod holder in time. It just complicates things. Usually when I hook a fish, the first thing I do, put this thing in neutral, set this thing to about 4, 5, maybe 3, 4, 5, and then I just provide constant tension while I'm fighting the fish, especially for people that aren't used to it. Whenever they do that, just giving them that constant, like a little bit of tension against the fish to pick up the slack when they got that much line out and they're fighting a fish, where it's running this way and running that way, can make a world of difference. It'll make or break a lot of catches, I think. The other cool thing is too, sometimes I really like to troll super slow. And what's kind of neat is if I turn it this way, back towards me, and I want to troll super slow, we're not really doing that right now, but I'll show you. All I do is what am I going, 2.8 right now? It's as low as this thing will go in neutral, or in, I can turn that on in the front. It's on 10. I automatically just drop the mile per hour of trolling speed, and I can just fight it with the trolling motor in the front. I'm just providing that little bit of kickback on it. You don't want to do it all day. You probably don't have to do it all day, but every once in a while when I like to troll slow, I'll just turn it around like that, flip it back towards me, hit it on a speed, and then I can micromanage how slow I want to go below the trolling speed of this. And then you don't have to do the back trolling stuff, which you lose a lot of control with, especially when you're doing this. And of course you have to rearrange the way you do the rods and stuff. But yeah, that's three big reasons why I like to do that. It lets you be able to manage the rods, but not have to kill the motor. You can keep it in motion. Then you can kind of micromanage it. You know, if you want to turn, you don't worry about this. It keeps constant thrust. You just turn the head of the boat a little bit and it kind of goes with it. But the big thing, I think, though, out of all those things, that's cool. Having the trolling motor down while you're trolling, if you can, will catch you fish. Or more accurately, it'll keep you from losing fish. Because as soon as you do that, you can forget about this. Put the trolling motor down, manage it with your free hand. Just watching those rods. And then you don't lose any tension on the fish. And that's a big thing. It's saved me quite a few fish. I tell you what, we're gonna actually pick up the speed here a little bit. All these are running good.